Dominic LeBlanc was appointed Intergovernmental Affairs Minister in the last Trudeau cabinet shuffle. Traditionally, a difficult job made even more difficult by the delay in the pipeline expansion project, a project that's pitted Alberta and BC against each other. And now Ottawa's climate plan is in jeopardy. Coming up, we'll bring you Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc joins us from Moncton. Hello, Minister. Nice to see you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me on the show.
So your new job is, to keep the peace with the provinces. I don't imagine that's always an easy one. In fact, I don't think it's ever really that easy. And one of the many difficult issues that comes to mind now is pipelines. So the Federal Court of Appeal, in a unanimous decision, stopped the Trans Mountain expansion indefinitely. So I just want to ask you this. Were you caught off guard?
Well, I know I have enough experience with looking at complex court cases. You never know the decision, Joyce, until you get the decision. And you're right, it was a very significant decision of the Federal Court of Appeal. It's 250 some pages. They identified principally two areas where the government needs to do additional work. So what we've been doing since it came out a little over a week ago is really figuring out, in light of that important decision, what's the best way to move forward appropriately, and that work is ongoing. So when one gets a decision like that, one has to deal with it, and that's exactly what the government's doing.
No, I imagine that's exactly what you're doing, but there were two possible outcomes. You win, you lose. You win, it's simple, you keep going. You lose, there's a couple of scenarios that are possible. So when do you think you'll be able to tell Canadians what the path forward looks like, whether you're going to go to the Supreme Court, whether you're going to redo these consultations, when the assessment, the environmental assessment, are you going, is there going to be an emergency legislation? What are you going to do, and how long does it take to decide what you're going to do?
Well, I hope we have a path forward quickly in the coming days or weeks. We're certainly, as I say, working actively on identifying the best way to move forward properly. You've identified a number of options. The court focused on principally two areas. So that's obviously the source of a great deal of work we've been doing since we got the decision. We understand, for example, the concerns that Premier Notley expressed, the frustrations that a number of workers in Alberta have expressed. So we want to make sure we get it right. One thing that's clear to us, Joyce, is that the old way of ignoring Indigenous consultation, or Mr. Harper's approach of not dealing with legitimate and real environmental concerns, those days are over. The court made it very clear that you need robust environmental protections and meaningful consultation. So we had tried to improve an existing process that the previous government had. The court said that we have more work to do on a couple of aspects. We've also introduced and passed in the House of Commons, it's before Parliament now, legislation around these environmental assessments that we think will bring greater certainty going forward. But this project was necessarily sort of a work in progress, and we're continuing to figure out the best way to continue that work. Yeah,
but you can understand why Alberta is pretty angry at you, right? I mean, you're blaming, and you're not the first minister who does that, the previous government. You had 3 years to change the way you consult with people, the way you do environmental assessments. So I'm not buying that about blaming the guys that were there before you. And Rachel Notley, Alberta's Rachel Notley's message to you now is you need to get your act together, because Alberta, and she said it very clearly, a lot more elegantly than I'm saying it, but has been Canada's ATM machine, for so many decades, giving have-not provinces huge checks, and now it's being let down by Canada. Is somewhere, can you understand that? Is she right?
Well, as I said, we certainly understand her frustration. We understand the frustration of workers and the industry in Alberta. We believe and continue to believe that building a pipeline in the best possible way is essential for the Canadian economy, getting these natural resources to markets other than the United States, critical for the economic future of the country. But we were faced, as you said in the beginning, with a Federal Court of Appeal decision. And now it's incumbent upon the government to expeditiously and properly figure out the best way to move forward in light of this decision. So that's the work we're doing, and the Alberta government knows that, and we'll continue to work with them and work with Premier Notley's government.
Yeah, I keep thinking that there's some homework that you could have done before the 3 judges unanimously shut down the pipeline. And now you have Jason Kenney, the leader of Alberta's United Conservative Party, the official opposition over there, who is hoping to be the next premier, and now talking about, doing a referendum on these transfer payments. This is sort of the beginning of a constitutional crisis. I'm old enough to know how they start, and I think so are you. I mean, our history is not that far back. So is this a constitutional crisis? Is this why you were appointed as Intergovernmental Affairs? Because you may be running into some pretty, nasty disputes.
Well, obviously, Mr. Kenney is seeking to inflame and exasperate those frustrations for his own reasons in Alberta. He can be accountable for that. I don't think that it necessarily serves the interests of getting the pipeline built in the best possible way. It doesn't serve the interest by linking a whole series of other issues to that important process. What we know, and
but
we've
they
said
are
this
linking
from the
them,
very
Minister.
beginning.
They are linking them because they believe they are linked. They believe that they have been let down by Ottawa, and Alberta, who has been actually realistically writing those checks, is saying now you have let us down, and we will get out of your climate plan, and we are thinking even of having a referendum. There's rumors out there, and that there may be even a sort of separatist mood happening. Albertans are angry at you.
Well, so we understand that frustration. As I said, Joyce, we're not insensitive to that frustration. In fact, we share the frustration that Albertans and many other Canadians have about finding a circumstance where an industry as important to the economy of the country as the Alberta oil industry is basically a captive to one market. That's why we think that it was in the national interest to build the pipeline. But we're gonna look at the best way forward to ensure that it's built. That's what Canadians expect their governments to do. For Mr. Kenney or others to play the politics of fear or to exasperate regional divisions, we don't think is constructive. What we're going to continue to do is identify the best way forward in light of the federal court decision to ensure the pipeline's built. A lot of work has already been done, Joyce. The marine scoping issue, the court referred to the southern resident killer whales, which are an endangered species. We have continued to do a great deal of work, both since the court case began and as recently as the last number of weeks, to ensure that we have the best possible protections, for example, around that endangered species. So this is the work that Canadians expect their government to do, and we're focused on doing that work, but we'll work very collaboratively with the government of Alberta. You mentioned the climate change plan. The government of Alberta has been, Premier Notley's government has been a leader in the fight against climate change. So we're going to continue to work with her government because Canadians expect us to work with provinces and territories to find the best way forward to put a price on pollution. So that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, well, it's not going to, it doesn't look like it's going to be so easy. I mean, yes, Alberta was one of your biggest allies, and Rachel Notley doesn't seem to want to be, nor her successor, if indeed Jason Kenney wins. Ontario, Saskatchewan, now Alberta, can you even get them back on board? And we haven't even talked about pot and healthcare. Those are other issues that you'll have to deal with the provinces. So, I think you're going to have a busy fall, Minister. Thanks so much for being with us today.